All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. We got another amazing special guest. Today, we have Amanda Schissler, the CEO and head coach of ASFitness, which is a women's online fitness and nutrition coaching business. Amanda, thank you so much for being here and taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
It's always fun when you're like Instagram friends and you can actually like look at each other and chat like
Right.
normal people. Yeah.
Right.
It's always a good time. So I'd love it if you could just share with the audience your kind of foray into the fitness industry. You can make it a long version if you want, short version, just a little background on who you are.
Sure. So did not get into the fitness industry in the way that I wish that I did. I used to be an MLM rep for a very popular MLM health quote unquote company. And when I first got into that, I thought being a coach would mean that I was going to learn stuff about fitness and nutrition. And then I came to find out that it just meant I was going to be peddling supplements that, I didn't actually really want to be trying to sell. So it was my segue into lifting. So for that, I'm grateful. But that was really all that I got out of it. Once I realized I did not want to be a coach for this MLM company, I left my job in healthcare. That was a really difficult decision because there was a lot of stability there. I took a big pay cut to become a personal trainer, but ultimately it ended up being the best decision I ever made because fitness and nutrition is my passion, and helping women specifically is really what I care about. I feel like women are very affected by diet culture and, having to fit societal norms of looking a certain aesthetic. So for that, my team and I, we focus on helping women get away from diet culture and learning to eat in a sustainable way. And, whatever way they want to look is completely up to them. We don't believe in a one size fits all type of program. Healthy is a size that looks different on everyone. But ultimately we focus on like hormone function, specifically with eating better and taking supplements to help with hormone dysfunction that is often a result of chronic dieting. So that's really in a nutshell what I do and what my team does.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you bring up some points that I definitely want to dive into about your personal journey, because I know you faced some struggles there. But first, I'd love it if you could define what diet culture means to you.
Yeah, sure. So diet culture is this, it's just very extreme. There's this whole mindset in fitness and nutrition that we need to starve and suffer in order to get to our results. Women typically go for these crash diets like keto and Weight Watchers, and I'm not going to name all these other companies because I don't want you to get in trouble. But there's just this whole mindset that women need to be on like 1,000 to 1,200 calorie diet in order to get great results, whereas in reality, you should be eating a lot of food. Our whole mindset is you should be eating as much as you can and moving as little as possible to get to your results. That way, it's that much easier to make adjustments when you hit a plateau, instead of this opposite extreme thing where let's eat as little as possible and run ourselves into the ground with tons of exercise. And then where do you go once you hit a plateau? So that's kind of what diet culture is in my perspective, of extreme crash diets and trying to look a certain way, skinny, whatever society has trended towards now.
Yeah, for sure.
Big butts, little waists.
Yeah. I mean, I only ask because the term diet culture is it's getting thrown around a lot, and then different people are getting targeted for different, like some people might call what I talk about diet culture because I talk about calories, right? But to me, it's education. And I think that's a heavy part of what you do, is educating these women on, what they need to sustain the results they're looking for. Whereas, like typical diet culture that I would is just like, let's just do everything we can as much as we can and hope for the best, which you've seen it. It doesn't work that way.
No, I mean, it works for a little while, but we know as coaches that metabolic adaptation is going to happen. And then what? I don't know if you follow Mike Milner. He's actually one of my business coaches, but something that he said that's kind of always stuck in my head is what you did to get there is what you have to do to stay there. And when women do these low calorie diets and run themselves in the ground with cardio, like where do you really go once you're married into misery at that point? So
I love that.
Yeah. So can't say those are my words, those are Mike Milner's words, but they really resonated with me and what I do.
Absolutely. Well, and it's true. And I think someone else just put up a post on social media about something like that too, is like, you can't just go on a diet, lose 20 pounds and expect to keep the 20 pounds off, right? That's not really how it works. And I don't know if it's programming or just historically or generational, but, I think women over 40, especially, like they've dieted at least a dozen times. And every time they want to go on a diet, it usually involves something restrictive. You have to take something out, something you can't have, and something you must do. What do you do for women kind of in that situation? How do you reprogram them to maybe approach it in a different manner?
Yeah, I would say it's not always easy. Especially when someone has done, like you said, a dozen diets. They have that whole mindset of I have to restrict to get results. So a lot of it is a lot of hand holding in the beginning and reassuring that you can eat what you want in moderation and reasonably to get the results. But 90% of my clients end up having to go through a reverse diet. And I don't know if you do reverse dieting with your clients, and I don't know if anyone listening really even knows what that is, but that means starting wherever they are and slowly, methodically increasing their calories upward to get them to where they should be eating. I would say it can be a bit of a mind fuck for people in the beginning, because it's hard to wrap your head around eating more is going to help you in the long run. But once they start seeing like, oh my God, my calories are going upwards and I'm not gaining fat and I'm not gaining weight, then it gets a lot easier to be on board. But I would say it's not always easy in the beginning, but that's why I have a good coaching job. And that's why I have a whole team behind me. Like we've been through that process ourselves. So we know how scary it can be to start something you've never done and something that's polar opposite of what diets teach people.
And getting the buy-in, I think, is the most important part. Like it's happened on a number of occasions where clients will be like, are you sure my calories should be this high? Like this seems like a lot of food. And you have to explain to them that this is the missing piece, because if you can eat more food and lose fat over time, because it doesn't happen right away, at the end of the day, that's what you want. If you want to have food freedom, you want to be able to, grab a couple slices of pizza on an off day or go for ice cream with your kids. Like you want to be able to do that, but you can't do that at 1,000 calories, because
Absolutely.
you're starving yourself and then you're binging. And then that's a whole, I'm sure, another issue that you guys have helped women work through. But what do you do in terms of that pushback? Like, oh, I don't know if this is working. Like, have you gotten that from clients where you're like, they are not all the way bought in to the parameters in the beginning?
Yeah, of course. There's always going to be that small population that's thinks it's not working. But I kind of set them up with this analogy of like, okay, if you put $10 into an ATM and you knew that in 3 months from now, it was going to give you back $5,000, would you do it if you could just patiently wait for that money to come out 3 months? Well, of course you would. It's kind of the same thing with reverse dieting. We kind of have to take a little bit of a step backwards, it feels like, to move forward. We can't go into a fat loss phase until we're eating in a high enough calorie intake to do so. A lot of what I do is stuff about hormones. I look at people's blood panels, and women especially are really highly affected hormonally from chronic dieting. This really does a number on sex hormones, thyroid function, and adrenal response. And when we look at things like eating, it doesn't seem like, okay, how am I going to repair my hormones through food? It really has a lot to do with everything. What we eat. I know that's like a cliche, but everything we put into our bodies, the chemical reactions going on inside are very dependent upon those foods. So if our bodies are deficient in the nutrients we need, then the chemical reactions we need to occur are not happening, or they're not happening sufficiently. So I was just kind of set it up with this analogy of like, okay, this is the ATM machine. Your body is the ATM machine. You're going to put this $10 in 3 months from now, you're going to get $5,000. So it's a lot of developing trust with that client. They have to trust you. in order to understand the process. And like you said, education. When people understand the science behind what they're doing, I think it makes it easier to get on board with this process.
110%. And something I read on your page was, and it stuck out, was you flipped the switch in your fitness journey. And that kind of struck a chord with me, because, you know, I tell people all the time, like, I've been a fat kid. I've been there. I've had the weight gain. I've had the binges. I've helped people overcome that stuff. What was it for you that you're like, I can't do this anymore?
I hired a coach. I got really lucky that I had a really good mentor when I went into personal training. I was actually stuck in this whole starvation mindset and working out a ton. I was doing this HIIT cardio class 5 times a week for an hour. And I didn't feel satisfied until my heart rate monitor said I burned off like 500 calories. And then I would go home and lift weights after that with these like little 5 and 8 pound dumbbells to try and build muscle. And I was not getting the results I wanted. And I was miserable eating 1,200 calories through this. I mean, my husband was like, you can't keep doing this. This is affecting our relationship. So I got lucky that when I became a personal trainer, that my mentor was like, I need to help you. You can't help your clients until I can help you. And he put me through a reverse diet. And that was just kind of where the light bulb went off. Like, wow, I'm getting way better results eating. And not only that, I have energy now and my libido is higher and I don't feel like stabbing people all hours of the day because I have no carbohydrates. So that's just kind of when that switch flipped. And that's when I really was like, I need to help other women have this same epiphany.
I love that. Yeah. How many years ago was that?
Oh, that was about 8 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. You're pretty well versed, because when you said you didn't have the usual entry into the industry, I mean, I didn't necessarily either. I know some people I've talked to on the podcast have been like personal training since they're 18. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell I wanted to do at 18, let alone help people with their health. My own journey was messed up. In terms of the mentor and the reverse diet, because a lot of coaches online will argue about reverse dieting. Is it effective? Is it not effective? Is it a real thing? Is it not a real thing? Do you find that like the reverse diet in principle is just like helping people eat more slowly because doing that slowly will help them, versus a lot of coaches will be like, no, just jump them 500 or more calories because they need it and they'll be fine? But you know firsthand, and I think you can probably explain this better than I, is like, if you tell someone who's been chronically dieting to just eat 500 more calories on top of what they're going to freak out. They're like, there's no way to go from 1,200 to 1,700. It's almost a 50% increase. And they're not about this. So is that why you kind of went this reverse diet slow route?
Yeah, I do things very conservatively because I mean, women especially just have this huge fear of getting fatter. Like, you know, scientifically, sure, I could jump them up 500-600 calories and they would gain weight and they would gain fat and eventually they would adapt and that would become their new baseline, but they'd have to be willing to gain more weight and gain more fat in order for that to happen if they wanted to do it aggressively. Whereas if we do it slowly and build, you know, one good habit on top of another good habit, I feel like that's way less overwhelming. It's much easier to develop trust with the client. And it's not so daunting to eat this massive amount of food. You know, I have a hard time getting women to be okay sometimes with going up to 1,400 calories and they're telling me, oh my God, this is too much food. And I'm like, but you told me you want to eat more. You want to be able to have the pizza. You want to be able to have the beer on the weekends. And, you know, it's just like when they clean up their nutrition, they're not eating as much processed crap. Then they're eating a lot of veggies and fruit. Of course, that's taking their calories downwards because they're eating so much low calorie food. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to eat a lot more food, but you're going to feel a lot better. And I don't like to focus on removing anything at all. You know, there's enough programs out there that do that. I'm like, let's just focus on things that we can add. And once you've mastered that, we can add on more good habits and more good habits. And by the time we get through adding on all these good habits, there are no more bad habits. They've just kind of faded out.
I love it. What kind of do you work on in terms of habit building with them? Like what would be like the first couple of weeks?
For some people, it might be better quality food. Like if I look at their food journal and I see like it's all processed junk, the first thing we might focus on is just getting a fruit or veggie on every plate. You know, doesn't matter if it's a fruit or a veggie, let's just get some healthy micronutrients into your every single meal. Or for some women, it might be just more protein. Like, okay, you're getting no protein. How about we just focus on getting 15 to 20 grams at every meal? And then once you get good at doing that, then we can just add a couple more bites at every meal and keep building on top of that instead of, trying to overhaul their entire life. Or maybe they're not eating that poorly at all, but they're not sleeping. So we focus on, okay, let's just get a really good quality of sleep. How much better do people show up when they're rested? So really is dependent on the person.
I love it. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, good habits is gonna be the difference maker, right? Because like you said it, we can go ahead and remove everything. We can remove one thing a week and it's only going to lead to more wanting of the things.
Absolutely.
It's only going to make the journey harder when you take some away. Like when we're kids, you're told you can't have that, don't do that. Right. I'm learning it right now with my 5-year-old. I tell him to do things. This kid is more stubborn than I am, and he's not going to do it. And why do we think that adults are different? Like arguably we're worse in a way. So I think, building those habits is key, and sleep is something that's definitely overlooked. I know a few clients of mine who really struggle to kind of wind down and like go to bed at a decent time. How do you help those women who maybe struggle with staying asleep or getting to sleep kind of get in that habit?
Oh man. So I'm about to do my own podcast episode entirely on sleep because like you said, this is something that's very overlooked. So I have a lot of my clients are healthcare workers and they work night shift. And I'll tell you, people who do shift work sleep like shit. Because they try to like sleep like a normal person when they're off. And then of course, they have no consistency with their sleep pattern. So we kind of focus on like, okay, if you can't get enough hours of sleep, let's make sure that the hours you are sleeping really count. Just creating like better sleepy time habits, shutting electronics off 1 to 2 hours before it's time to sleep, or wearing those blue light glass blocker, whatever you call them. And, not having caffeine within a certain window before bedtime, creating a good sleep environment, a cool environment, a fan or something to block out sound. So, I don't know if you track your own sleep. I wear an Aura ring. Do you have one?
I have one too. Yeah.
This thing was a game changer.
Yeah.
I really thought I was a good sleeper. Turns out I'm not. So sometimes I'm like, if it's in your budget and you can track your sleep, like let's start there. We have to analyze what's actually going wrong in order to fix it. That's true. I guess that would be like the gist of changing someone's sleep.
I think screen time is probably the biggest thing. Like I don't know about you, but like my phone's next to me all day long, and to a fault, like it really shouldn't be, but that's just something that we're doing. And with shift workers, I imagine too, they're finished their shifts, they're on their way home or they're at home trying to relax, but they haven't been on social media all day. So out comes the phone, or they want to watch TV, or both. And then all of a sudden they're mentally stimulated, they're snacking, and then they're trying to go to bed. And like you said, like you can't catch up on sleep. I think that's the biggest thing is sleep catch up. I think is a huge myth. If you're sleeping certain hours every single day and it's less than you want, and then on the weekend you're like, I'm going to sleep 2 extra hours.
Right.
It's not going to help. I don't think it helps this way. And I don't know about you. For me, anytime that's happened, I feel like shit. Like I feel like I feel worse. So I'm like, I should have just got up my normal time because this is what my body's become used to.
Exactly.
Right? You find that as well?
Yeah, I don't believe in that. We're in a sleep deficit. Let's try and use the days off to catch up. Like you said, it's not very possible. And I don't know about you, my body won't even let me sleep past a certain amount of hours anymore. Like once I'm at like 7 or 7.5 hours, regardless of what time I went to bed, my body's like, time to get up.
That's just for me. That's just not from having
kids. Prior to kids, my sleep was all over the place because I was a shift worker. So
there you go.
Yeah, kids, they really change everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't brag, but I'm really lucky that both my kids sleep through the night, and they kind of always have since like 4 or 5 months. So like any parent that's like, my kid's waking up at 2 and 4, and I'm like, there's really nothing you can do for that. Yeah, that's something that just you got to deal.
That's tough. Yeah, that's kind of just like, all right, this is a season of your life. You're going to have to just kind of grit your teeth and get through it. But yeah, I got kind of lucky. My kids are good sleepers, and my oldest son is 12. He's definitely in this phase where he wants to sleep until like noon. And
I remember those days.
And I have to like wake him up. I'm like, you have to get up because you're not going to go to bed later.
Yeah. It's funny because like as an adult in especially in my 20s before kids, I'm like, I lose the day. Like if I got up past 10, is obviously pre-children.
Right.
Half my day would be gone. By the time I get up, and now, so I'm like, but
Mm-hmm.
now I'm a 6 a.m. I'm the early bird dad who kind of has to do his work before everyone gets up, because there's
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of quiet time in the house these days.
I'm sure.
I don't know what COVID's done to you guys over in Maryland, but over here we've been locked down like more than 2/3 of the last 2 years. So like everyone's been home, which I love my family, but quiet is underrated, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I feel for you. We're not locked down. Everything is open. They just removed the mask mandates here, which, you know, people feel the way they feel about it. But when we were on a complete lockdown, I was definitely not in a good place mentally, being trapped inside with my kids and homeschooling. God bless people who are doing that.
Yeah, my respect for teachers went through the roof during that, because I'm like, how the hell do they do this with multiple children, and plus like they have their own kids plus their teaching class, and I'm like, it's not for me. It's not for me at all.
No, I agree. I have a whole newfound of love and respect for teachers since having my own kids. You really don't, I guess, maybe not value teachers as much until you have your own kids in school, and you're like, wow, they really do a lot, and they deserve to be paid so much more for what they do.
100%. Yeah. I'd love to dive in if you're willing to share. Sure. I'd love to dive in because I work with a ton of moms. Your postpartum journey. I saw the post on your Instagram about, you know, after having kids and like not being happy. Could you walk us through kind of what went down before, during, after, and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So I have 2 kids. Both of my postpartum recoveries were very different. I had my first son when I was 24, so I was pretty young. And I had never worked out outside of like sports a day in my life, and never did intentional exercise. And then if you would have told me that I was going to become a fitness coach, I would have laughed in your face. But my first son, I gained 40 pounds with that pregnancy. I've always been lean my whole life. I would say skinny. I had no muscle whatsoever. But I couldn't lose those last 20 pounds after my first son. And that's kind of how I got into that MLM thing. I was like, I got to get this weight off. I didn't do it the right way. And, my second time, this is when I was very educated and had gone through personal training and weightlifting. The problem was the pressure I put on myself as a coach to look a certain way. I really believe in walking the walk and talking the talk. So I rushed back into weightlifting and lifting heavy. And as a result, I ended up with pelvic floor dysfunction, which is in America is not talked about a lot. I know Canadians have much better postpartum care than what we have in the States, but in the United States, it's like you have a baby, you go for a 6-week postpartum checkup, and then you kind of just get a foot in the ass and are like, all right, good luck.
Wow.
Whereas, I know other countries in Europe, it's like part of your care plan. After you have a baby, you go to a physiotherapist or physical therapist and you get pelvic floor therapy. I didn't know about any of that stuff until I had my second son. And I learned a lot about that from Molly Galbraith. And I was like, wow, I've been missing this whole big education component to postpartum recovery. So I will say that my second recovery, although I quote unquote bounced back faster because I was in much better shape when I had my second son, I really did some damage to my pelvic floor being in such a big hurry to get back into lifting. So now when I work with like a postpartum mom, I'm like, we need to focus on healing. I know that everyone's all focused on their pre-baby body, but your health and your healing is so much more important. The fat loss can come later. Yeah. Like the first year of having a baby should be all about bonding with your child and just healing from this big traumatic event. Having a baby is a traumatic event to your body. So yeah, that's kind of what mine was like. But having made those mistakes just helps me to better help the women who also are in a big hurry to get back to looking a certain way.
Absolutely. And I think the trust factor for you is an easier one because you've been there. Like you've experienced certain things that your clients have experienced as well or are experiencing. So they trust you. And it's a big deal. I think walking the walk is a tough one as a coach. Like I put pressure on myself. No one's harder on me than I am. Sometimes it's not a good thing. And I'm sure you've experienced the same because, anyone who owns a business, it's another one of your babies in a way, right? Like absolutely. If I'm not working, I'm not providing. So it's something that like I want to be on all the time. And then with the physical part of it, or the physique and body image and stuff, it's like sometimes you just like that pressure, it just mounts. I find I love all my internet friends, but sometimes I've just muted a whole bunch of people just so I can clear my own head and stop comparing what I've got going on and what they've got going on. Have you ever found yourself in a similar space where you're just like, I need to focus on, I got my blinders on, I got me, my clients, my family, and that's it?
Yeah, I had to unfollow. I used to follow a bunch of like fitness influencers with like amazing chiseled bodies. They could be women's health magazine covers, and that really messed up my brain. That comparison syndrome is a real big trap to fall into. And I felt like if I didn't look like a coach, then nobody was going to want me to be their coach. But also I go through phases where I have a little bit more body fat than some of these other influencers. I don't ever want anyone to call me an influencer. That word kind of makes me cringe, but I'm like, I'm not an influencer. I'm a coach. I don't care about the followers. I just want to help people. So, yeah, I have to follow people who add value to my news feed. They don't take away from it. They don't make me feel like shit as I'm consuming their media. But nowadays I don't have a lot of time to consume anyway. So it's work, time with my kids. There's not a whole lot of in between.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. I think we all spend too much time on social media as it is anyways.
Yeah.
Speaking of, again, rummaging through your Instagram, just picking out some golden nuggets. The term no BS strategies really caught my eye because I've been very much a no bullshit person. And I've been complimented on a few times about like how I don't pull punches and I'm very transparent, and so are you, which is why I wanted to have this chat. What are some of the big, like, we got to do this, my no BS strategies? What do you have for clients in that respect?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I am definitely not a bullshitter. If you don't want something sugar coated, I'm your girl. I don't think that helps anybody. I try to, delicately deliver some news to people, but I'm never going to lie to you and tell you what you want to hear. I'll always tell you what you should hear. So no BS is absolutely no starving. I don't believe in that at all. Like I said, we should be eating as much as we can to see the results that we want. I do not believe in doing excessive amounts of cardio. Cardio serves a purpose. It's great for some things. It's not great for other things. I don't believe in not using the scale. I know a lot of coaches are like, oh my God, don't get on the scale or whatever. I think the scale is a good tool for some things and a really poor tool for other things. It's just a matter of knowing like what tool to pull out for certain situations. The scale is really great for reverse dieting. It's really terrible to measure fat loss. But overall, I just believe in education is so important. When people know better, they do better. So I would say most of what I do is just teaching people.
I love it. And that's the scale is something that, again, with most women, it's this attachment to the number that I find that it's, you have to break it. And the biggest problem I see is just, they'll say, I'm going to go weigh myself and see. Like, that is honestly the worst possible thing you can do, because it literally tells you nothing. It tells you
nothing.
How much you ate the day before, how much you slept or didn't, how much water you had or didn't, like if you went to the bathroom or not, if it's time of the month or not. Like, that one random weigh-in, we put so much value in it, and we don't need to. How do you help women who kind of just like, it's the scale, I need the number to go down? How do you wrap their heads around it, especially if they don't have a good relationship with the scale?
So because I have to reverse diet so many of my clients and they have to weigh themselves daily through that process, they actually learn to become less attached to that number, because we can look at their biofeedback and be like, okay, this is probably why you've gained weight overnight. Like, we know you can't gain 5 pounds of fat overnight. It's all fluid retention and inflammation. So like, if somebody weighs 150 on Monday and Tuesday they're 155 and they're having a freak out moment, like, oh my God, my weight's up 5 pounds. I'm like, okay, well, let's figure out why that is. 9 out of 10 times it's something they ate the day before. They either had too much sodium, they ate more carbohydrates than they normally do, or maybe they just overate in general. And we're like, okay, well, now we can go look. You had a margarita yesterday and you also had, a plate of pasta at Chili's. So there was a lot of sodium there. Okay, you're inflamed. But then once they see that number go back down in the next day or two, once they've, gotten some of that inflammatory stuff out of their diet, they're like, oh my God, okay, wow, it is not fat gain. So through that process, I have found that women are less attached. And by the time we get to maintenance or a fat loss phase, I never use the scale for that at all. We completely remove it. So it's a good tool, like I said, for reverse dieting, not a good tool for fat loss or maintenance. Then we're only focused on progress photos at that point. I don't even have people measure their girth measurements anymore, because I found that was even fucking with women's heads. Like, oh my God, my butt went up 2 inches. I'm like, well, yeah, you've been killing it with deadlifts and squats and, hip thrusts. Of course your glutes are getting bigger. So, those numbers are really arbitrary. I just tell people, like, how do you feel? We can't just look at, if you're losing fat. There's so much more to changing your body and your health than looking a certain way. That's really just a byproduct of eating better and moving more and sleeping better. And yeah, so
it's focusing on the journey instead of the outcome, right? Like, I've had women tell me, like, I don't know if this is working. Like, I'm frustrated. The scale went up, but my pants feel better and I have more energy and I'm stronger. And I'm like, well, one, if your pants are looser and your clothes are fitting better, you're losing fat. Like, that's typically what happens. You're getting fitter overall. Like, no matter what that scale says. And yeah, I've faced attachment to the scale too. Like, I think we're programmed to have that number ingrained in our heads. But yeah, photos to me are the most important way to track the progress, right? That and asking certain questions on like a check-in form, because yes, they might come to us, say, I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay, great. But what does that look like? What does it feel like? It's not going to be, okay, so now you weigh 200 and then you're going to weigh 180 and all of a sudden life is magical. Like, that's not how it works, right? It's like you said, when you sleep better, you eat better, you feel better, you're on your way to losing the weight. It's not that it's not going to happen, but we're not focusing on the number.
I know, it's so funny how somebody could be like crushing their journey and they have this one weigh in and they're like, oh, it's all over. I'm a failure. I messed up. And I'm like, this is one day. What about all these other huge wins you're having? So we'll just kind of have like a coaching call. Like, okay, let's pretend you get on the scale today, that didn't happen. How's your sleep? How's your digestion? How's your sex life? I mean, we know that when people are feeling better, that and intimacy is a big deal, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, all of these things matter. And it's kind of like you said, you don't just hit this number and your life is magically perfect. Like, this is a lifelong journey. Once you get to this, aesthetic or number that you want to be at, then you have nothing to work towards. You have to be comfortable with like just living at that point. And that can really,
that's the hardest part.
That's the hardest part. Yeah. It's like, I'm not working towards anything.
Yeah. And I have a couple clients who are in that phase right now, but they've embraced it. And I tell people all the time, like, fitness as a whole, like maintaining a physique or body or whatever, it's not sexy. The stuff you do to get there is boring, repetitive, because that's your life. Like, you don't just like, I'm going to go on this thing, lose 20 pounds. And then you're just like, well, I don't know what to do now. Well, no, you repeat the things you did to get there and you maintain it. And I think maintenance is a scary thing for people because A, they don't know what it looks like because they've never been there. And B, maybe they're not confident in getting there themselves, right? It's like they've tried 6 other diets. All of them led them to that number, but they can never stay at that number. So they're like, well, I can't do it. It's me. I'm not meant to lose the weight. If you've heard things like that with women you've coached, how do you help them around that? Because I know that's really tough.
Yeah, kind of have that conversation. Like you said, you got to do the boring work. This is like my coach's mantra: do the boring work. And it's the boring work that gets you where you want to go. It's not this one big action that you take that gets you there. It's all these little things that you have to do every single day. And then like maybe you have to kind of shift your mindset around, okay, I've reached this aesthetic goal. Now we can start focusing on other cool things like performance-based goals. I love performance-based goals. It's very exciting when people stop focusing on how they look and focus on how they're moving or how they feel physically, like getting a new deadlift PR or whatever. I like to always set some sort of goal, at least for myself, so that I feel like I'm working towards something. because I'm comfortable with how I feel in my body and look in my body most of the time. But this is all practice. This is 8 years of doing the same boring shit all the time.
I mean, there's no top 2 secrets of a fitness professional?
No, I have no secrets. The secret is you got to just do the boring work.
That's the tough part, right? Like if we had like someone's like, oh, there must be like some solution, like you didn't get that body by, I'm like, if there was a secret magic pill that I had, don't you think I would just sell it?
You'd be rich as fuck.
You know what I mean? Like there's no, and that's the thing too with clients or otherwise, people that ask for help online. It's like, I want to help you, but you still have to just do the work. Like you're at the end of the day, like coaches don't do the work for you. We'll guide you, we'll help you, support you, reinforce things, help you reprogram things. But at the end of the day, like you have to be willing to just show up. And I still have it written on my whiteboard down here for like the last 2 years. Show up, because sometimes you don't want to. The days that you do, you're grateful that you did. You're happy because those workouts that you didn't want to do, sometimes they're the best. Sometimes you're like,
I know,
I didn't fucking want to do that, but it
are.
was like the best workout I've had in a while.
Yeah.
So,
and then I feel like a bad bitch at the end of that workout because I didn't even want to be there. And I'm like, man, I had like this killer workout and I was not even thinking about coming.
Yeah, that's usually the best part. Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
But the day, like you said, the days that you don't want to are usually the days you need it the most. Like if you don't want to, most likely you're tired, maybe you had a long day at work, you're stressed, but like I've never finished a workout and felt worse than I did before it. I always feel amazing at the end, and I've never regretted a workout. I've only ever regretted skipping them.
I love it. Yeah. And I think it's a mental battle, right? We face this resistance in ourselves that has to pull us out of our comfort zone. Whereas in the past, if you're tired, you skip the gym, you skip the workout. If you don't want to cook, you'll order Uber Eats or whatever it might be. But now that you're trying to make a change, you're trying to change your habits and your outlook, that resistance creeps in and you're like, well, I know I need to do that, but I don't want to. And then you fight with yourself. If you just give yourself permission to go do the thing, once you put your gym shoes on, get outside, put your favorite music on. For me, it's coming down to the basement, having some pre-workout and blasting some tunes. Like that's it for me. That once I do that, if you do one warm-up set,
you're gonna keep going.
The workout will be done. You'll finish it. It's just it's getting your foot in the door. It's deleting food delivery apps off your friggin' phone. My goodness. Both because it's a waste of money, in my opinion, because the service charges and the calories are arguably never worth it.
I agree.
Yeah. Do you find a lot of your clients are like, do they work out for the gym mostly, or they have home gyms? Is it kind of a mix of both?
I would say 75% of my clients actually do home workouts. Either they are not comfortable in the gym because they're self-conscious, they don't feel comfortable going there, or they're afraid of, COVID, which is totally fine. But what was I going to say? Human psychology is just very fascinating. Like we as humans just always want to take the path of least resistance. We hate doing things that are uncomfortable, and you have to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like meal prepping is uncomfortable when you'd rather sit down and watch Netflix for 3 hours and order a pizza. And putting on shoes to go in your basement and work out might be uncomfortable because there's 5 other things you're probably thinking about I could be doing or should be doing. But once you get comfortable with getting a little uncomfortable, it just gets that much easier. You have to just, like you said, show up. Just show up. And if you can't talk yourself into a 30-minute workout, then commit to 5 minutes. Like that all or nothing mindset is such a trap.
That must be even harder for you to work with too, with reverse diets and stuff, right? It's because like they either want to just lose all the fat or not do anything at all.
Yeah. But I love what I do. I love just helping women have these mindset shifts. Like I feel like so much of what I do is mindset coaching. It's not even, the program is a program. You can have a half-ass shitty program and still get good results with people as long as they do it. But just helping people change their mindset and outlook on everything is so rewarding and fulfilling, because I was once in their shoes.
That's something I've really learned more so over the last 3 years, like this whole fitness thing is so much more than the food you eat in the workouts. Like it's true. Like I've had clients see great results with a gym program, with half circuit training, half my stuff, with mostly walking. Like it really, they're getting more active And then the food they eat, it's the mindset behind like wanting to make better choices. It's getting them out of the all or nothing, I have to do no carb, or I'm just going to eat whatever I want mindset. It's the like, I had one woman last year, she was working out 6 days a week and on 1,200 calories. And I was like, and I told her even before we started, I'm like, you're working out too much and you're eating too little. Like in this, and she's a smaller woman, but she said she wants to just trim up a little bit. Cool. My goal for her, I told her, I'm like, I want you eating more and lifting less by the time this program is finished. 3 months later,
like, are you crazy?
Yeah, she was like, I want that so badly, but I don't know how to do it. So it was 3 months later, she graduated from the program. We had her eating at least 400 calories more per day and lifting 3 to 4 days a week on average. And she messaged me like last week. She's like, I'm still maintaining my weight. I'm eating more food. I'm enjoying the freedom, less restrictions. And I'm like, this is what it's about, is just having freedom to live.
Yes.
And live healthily in a way, but having that kind of mindset, and you really just have to coach people on like trying to break the chain of what they're used to doing is so hard. Cause I don't know about you, like I'm stubborn. I don't want to change some things, but I know I need to, right?
Oh yeah. We all have those days, and there are days where I'm like, I'm not doing shit. Because I can. So, but, yeah, the perfectionism and the all or nothing thing, we got to take that off the table. There is no such thing as a perfect day with eating and exercise. Like I could ask all 50 some clients on my container what that looks like. What's a perfect day look like? And I will get 50 different answers. Yep. So we have to completely remove that, and you have to remove speed from the equation. Like there is no timeline. This is going to happen when it happens. If you do things right and you want to do it sustainably, you can't be thinking about fast. And that's really hard for a lot of people because they're so used to instant gratification in every other area, or getting really quick results doing, a 1,000-calorie diet. Well, I lost 20 pounds on XYZ program. I'm like, yeah, but you're here right now. So how did that work for you?
Exactly. It's tough. Yeah. And it's like, I have a client, she's frustrated, scale's not moving much. She's like almost about a month in. I'm like, okay, I know the scale. She's like, I'm eating right. I'm doing the thing. I'm moving more. I'm drinking more water. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you're doing all the amazing things. Your clothes are fitting better. And then I got her form the other day, and she's talking about, okay, I'm going to try to remove some carbohydrates, some extra carbs, because I think it might be a digestion issue. And I'm like, okay. And I sent her a 10-minute response, just outlining everything. I'm like, first, get tested. If it actually is a digestion issue, I need to see it. Like I want to know, because we don't know. I argue most people don't know. They just they blame carbs because carbs are bad, quote unquote. Like they just think that's the enemy, when reality usually it's the portion size. But I explain, I'm like, look, you want to cut out carbs for a while, go for it. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to see a big drop on the scale right away. Then you're going to reintroduce carbs at some point, and you're going to see the scale go right back up, and possibly more. So I need you to know that any weight you lose over the next 2 weeks is not fat. It's going to be water. And just educating, it's mostly women like that, I think is the biggest thing, because you can cut all the carbs and lose all the weight, and then you start eating them again. And then what happens? You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. Like I said, what you did to get there is what you have to do to stay there. Do you want to never eat another carbohydrate again? Probably not.
No, that sounds like a nightmare.
I'm really not a nice person on a low carb day. So I know my female clients feel the same way. And I know I bring up hormones a lot, but like not having carbohydrates really does a number on your cortisol response. Like being in a calorie deficit period is stress on the body. And if you're stressed, you're producing cortisol. That's a stress hormone. And cortisol is not always bad. It's got a lot of good functions, but only in the right amount. So if you're producing a lot of cortisol, then that negatively impacts women's cycles, their fertility, their inflammation. So, when I explain to women like, hey, carbohydrates, they're really demonized in the fitness industry because they're water retentive. For every gram of carbohydrate you consume, you're going to hold on to like 4 mLs of water, which is really not that much. We have to understand the intention behind everything we do. What's the intention of removing carbohydrates? To get a quick quick change in the scale. But does that really matter if you feel like shit and you have no energy and you're going to gain it all back? No, there's no point in doing any of that.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm anytime anyone's commented on, like I did a photo shoot a couple of years ago when I got super lean, anyone that's ever asked how I did it, I'm honest. The last week of that leading up to the photo shoot fucking sucked. I had next to no carbs. I had a shit ton. Like I had to pick up my wife from work, which was 40 minutes from home. And I was drinking a gallon or more water a day. So I had to pee all the time. I was speeding home to go. So like, I'm like, it wasn't fun, but it wasn't meant to be a sustainable effort there. I was just trying to get stupid lean for pictures. I was the last day before, it was 3 30-gram protein shakes. And that was it. I think it was like 900 calories at most for 220 at the time, 220-pound man. Like it was not, and I had to sit in a water bath and warm and sweat. I'm like, you don't want to do what I did because it wasn't sustainable. Because after that, I went back to eating normally. You know, I gained some weight back. Cool.
Yeah, sure.
But that's what happens, right? I didn't want to ever eat that little and just live off of like protein, and like protein shakes mixed with ice. So the point where they're huge and they like just taste gross.
Oh God.
Yeah. So for anyone, like if you've seen someone's photo shoot pictures and they're stupid lean, just know that they don't walk around like that all the time. It's very, very rare.
Exactly.
And if they are, that should be strived for either.
No. And if women are looking that lean year round, they are suffering on the inside. Like
100%.
They're probably not getting a menstrual cycle. They probably have no energy. And eventually they will pay for that down the road. Women are not meant to be super lean. Like body fat is important. We should have some body fat. And and like you said, you just never know what's going on behind the scenes of someone's photo. Like social media is a facade. When I get down to my leanest, I'm not having a good time. I'm not ever drinking alcohol. I'm having very minimal sugar at all. You know, it's for a purpose. And like you said, it's short term. It's not you're not meant to live in a calorie deficit.
Yeah, no, especially not an extreme one. You feel like absolute trash. Yeah, this has been an amazing conversation. I do love this. If you could leave us with a golden nugget for the audience, it can be anything and absolutely anything you want it to be.
I am so bad at these golden nugget advice pieces.
That's why I like including them, because I suck at them too.
Okay, so I guess my golden nugget would be: don't start something if you don't think you can do it forever. If you want to have long-lasting results, you have to be reasonable with your expectations, and you have to be willing to do the boring work every single day, and you have to just show up. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to show up. And I promise if you keep showing up, you will get where you want to go. Not always quickly, but you will get there. And the best way to do that is hire a coach. Hire someone who knows what the hell they're doing. Don't try and do this shit on your own. I mean, aside from like, you could spend a lot of time looking up all the information that we know and have to dig through the BS to find the facts. You could just save yourself a ton of time to hire somebody who knows what they're doing, who's going to navigate you and support you through that whole process. And eventually you'll be able to go on and live your life and never have to go through one of those god awful programs again.
I love it. The analogy I use with people is I never want to fix my own car because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Right. Right.
But here we are, crash diets and extreme HIIT cardio sessions and just fucking up our bodies. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again for taking the time, Amanda. Where can everyone find you? I'll leave the show notes anyway, but let everyone know where they can find you.
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at ASFitness1. I do have a free Facebook community for women who are tired of the dieting charade. It's called Women's Anti-Dieting Secrets. Women's Fat Loss and Anti-Dieting Secrets. Terrible. I don't even know my own group name. And I also do have my own podcast with two of my coaching friends called the Bod Squad Podcast. So you can check us out on there.
Awesome stuff. Yeah. And I'll leave all those links in the show notes. Amanda, again, thank you so much for taking the time. Such a great conversation. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, John.
Thanks so much.